It's like 9 months in advance. So at that time, the village didn't exist. So here we are.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You were waiting for me.
Thank you.
But today we're going to talk about preparing to have your second baby, which is like a whole it's like there's the, hey, I thought this is what having a kid was going to be like, and this is the rude expectations that I've been awakened to, and these parts are better than what I thought, and then these parts are worse than I thought, or birth didn't go the way that I wanted it to, or it did go the way that I wanted it to, or I had a horribly difficult baby, and that was really hard, so I don't think I could do that again. And my number one thing to say to you is that about 2 years along, you forget everything. You will forget almost everything. Like, you'll remember it, but it won't be as vivid as a memory as it is when you're in the first 6 months after having a baby.
Thank you.
But the other thing is that every pregnancy and every birth is different, and every kid is wildly different. And just because you had a good first baby doesn't mean that you're going to have a bad second one. And just because you had a bad first baby doesn't mean you're going to have a good second one. And for all the people that say there's no such thing as a bad baby, you're wrong. And there are babies that are hard.
Bad baby or hard baby?
Yeah, it's a hard baby. And I mean, but I think also trying to get semantics right when you're navigating this stuff and be like, oh, well, there's no such thing as a good or bad baby. Like, okay, cool. I understand. I'm drowning 3 months in having this. Like, I don't really care about that. My baby is hard, or my baby is easy. Or there's also the times where you're sitting in a group of moms and they're like, oh yeah, my kid sleeps great, or they did everything normally, or, you know, we
sleep in the car. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, you're like, my kid loves being in the car, and you're like, that's awesome. Like, I think I've said this before, I never had a hard car baby until Honora. And I was like, how do people live? How? Like, I drive to see my friend at her farm, which is 50 minutes away from our house. And I couldn't go for 8 months. And I was like, my life is disrupted by you. Stop. And she was like, I will not sit in the seat. I will not. It doesn't matter if you adjust me to high heaven. It doesn't matter if you have the perfect car seat. It does not matter. There are just some kids that hate the car seat. And your next kid probably won't. Or maybe they all will, but the only way you'll find out is if you bring another one into the fold. The other thing that I think is worth meriting is having a conversation with your partner that, like, are you both ready and this is what you both want? And most of the time when I'm talking to women who are ready to have a second kid, they've expressed that they're ready to have a second kid, the reason that they're wanting to talk to me about it, because somebody who's like wants to have a second kid and their husband's on board, they never talk to me. They just are like, we're pregnant. Like, I never have a conversation with them of my girlfriends or anything, but when there's like a challenge to it, whether it's a challenge with their own personal mindset or a challenge with their spouse's mindset, that's when they're like, so I want to have a second baby. What can I do to make it better? Because our first birth was hard and my husband's terrified that that's going to happen again. Or because the first baby didn't sleep for 6 months and we're terrified that's going to happen again. Or whatever it is, there are things that you can do physically, mentally, emotionally to prepare you and your spouse and your body and your mind for having another kid. And I think that's really important because more people plan their wedding or research where they're going to get a house than they do to prepare to get pregnant. And it is the most frustrating part of my life. Because they're like, or people are just expecting that pregnancy is going to be easily attainable. And then when it doesn't, then they start to do that. So I just was like, my PSA is, let's all work on our health for a minimum of 4 months. 8 would be better.
Why?
Before you try to conceive. Why? Because women take 120 days to make an egg. So if you made an egg this month, you had a cycle, and you successfully ovulated, you spent 4 months maturing that egg in your body. So 4 months of stress, 4 months of bad choices, 4 months of lack of sleep, 4 months of all that will make a crappy egg, and 4 months of intention and rest and good food and good supplements and all that stuff will set you up for a very successful egg. That's only half of the equation. Because there's that little thing that's required to have a baby. It's a sperm, right? And men take 60 to 75 days to have a sperm cycle. So a lot of times people, if they were like, oh, we had a hard time conceiving, or we had an easy time conceiving, and now we're having a hard time. So we had secondary infertility. So we were like shocked, because like we literally had been without any thought whatsoever. Just was a happy marriage, wedding accident. And not an accident, we obviously wanted to have a kid. But it was so simple that I was like, no, we're not pregnant for 8 weeks. And he was like, you're pregnant. And I'm like, I'm not. He's like, let's take a test. I was like, I won't.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, no, my period's going to come. It's just been really stressful. We just opened the office. Blah, blah, blah. We just had our wedding and all this stuff. And he's like, you're definitely pregnant. And I'm like, I'm not. He's like, Bridget, it's been 8 weeks since you've had a cycle. And I was like, yeah, I'm not. So he cornered me in the office and made me pee on a stick. He was like, do this. He literally was like, we're doing it now. And I was like, we're at work. We were. And it was, and he has known every time.
Wow.
Yeah. He's like, you're pregnant. He can tell whatever changes about me. So it's very funny. But anyway, so that was really easy, and then we got to trying to have Karen, and we couldn't. Like, I just did not get pregnant. And so that's when I started to learn about preconception health and preparing the body and how important it is for the mom and the dad, because really our culture has done a terrible job at the dad just being a sperm donor and everything being on the. I mean, we killed, like, Henry VIII killed women for not having sons, right? He was like, oh, you only have daughters or all your babies die. It's you. And I'm like, looking at your health records, Henry VIII, it was you. So if you're listening in whatever level of afterlife you're in, I'm going to think it's more down south. You were the problem. You were the problem. And Taylor Swift style. And so because the sperm builds the placenta, and so what the research is saying and all the stuff that's coming out is placental, like, attached illnesses are morning sickness, hyperemesis gravidum, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, preterm labor, all placental issues. The man builds the placenta, because if you could build a placenta, ladies, you would have one in you all the time. But another person has to come in, the sperm, and tell you to build it, which is also why you're like, see ya, right after the baby gets out. Because it's not your organ. Baby! That's so exciting. You're a good mommy. And so when I start to say that, like, I could just see light bulbs go off in your guys' eyes. Like, that makes so much sense. Because people are always like, oh, we built this whole organ. I'm like, you built the organ off of architectural plans that were given to you by the sperm. And he can have architectural plans that are drawn in jelly on the back of a napkin, or we can have architectural plans that are made full size with plumbing and wiring instructions. And the healthier our husbands are before we get to this point, the better it is. And so I have lots of women in my practice who had terrible morning sickness, like the worst morning sickness you've ever had in your life. They could barely function. And then when we start taking care of them, when we take care of their husband and then they try for another kid, they have zero morning sickness. And this is all in different clinics all across the country. But the husband's health is so important. So if I was going to easily say it, your husband needs to be on a prenatal vitamin. And it doesn't matter that the bottle is pink. There's nothing in there that makes him a girl. So the only thing that I would say is I would give a man a prenatal vitamin, and they make men's prenatals now, so you could get him a gray bottle if it makes him really feel better. They make prenatal vitamins without iron. So because men don't have cycles, they don't need iron at the same level that a woman does. So I would not overload my husband on iron, but I would put him on a very, he's like, why is my poop black? You're like, because you're taking the wrong prenatal now, my dude. And then fats. Fats are what build the sperm and egg. So like omegas and choline and any kind of fat that you can get into your life is very important to your cellular health. And as healthy as your cells are, the healthier conception is, because 2 healthy people should have the natural reaction of a healthy pregnancy. And our goal is not just to get pregnant, but to have a great pregnancy and a great birth and have that vitality all the way through. So that's the like physical way that you can prepare, but the mental way to prepare is like, what is it going to look like? And I feel like a lot of women are like, how am I going to love another person as much as I love this baby? Like, how am I going to have the capacity? How am I going to hold everyone? Like, how am I going to do all of this stuff? And you just do it. Like your heart was made to split, like it was made to share. You also love them very differently. Like the way that we love Vincent is so different from the way we love Karen and the way that we love Honora. Like everything is just so radically different that your heart just doubles like the Grinch, you know, it just grows in size. And I will tell you, for those of you with faith, is that God chose you to be the parent of these children. And so there will be a lot of moments in your life, whether you have 1 kid or 10 kids or whatever in between, you are going to look in the mirror and be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing the wrong thing. I don't think that this is right. Like, I should not have this kid, or I'm not good enough. Like, I'm not doing a good enough job as their parent. And when we get to that point, I always like to tell people, like, God did not make a mistake when he chose you to have these children. He knew that you would be the perfect mom for this kid, and that this kid would be the perfect addition to your family. And so how long and convoluted and twisty the journey is to parenthood, and as we go through it, God does a lot of work. But if our spouses are hesitant with having more kids, because I know, like, I talk to him all the time, when we had a prenup conversation. We don't actually have a prenup. The biggest thing that came out of our prenup was that I do the laundry and he does the dishes, which he regrets to this day.
It's a bad agreement.
My job is less frequent. His job is way too frequent.
3, 4, 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And it's super hard when I'm not home.
Yeah, and he's always at work. So there's a big sink of dishes because he doesn't get a chance to do it most of the day. But we're going to invest in a really high quality dishwasher, and it's going to help him. We're not really dishwasher people. We use our dishwasher as a drain, like where the dishes dry. But we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna spend a lot of money so it gives Dr. Vin a break. But the other thing I said to him is, I said, I want 8 kids, and he said, how about 9? And I didn't meet my husband until I was 31. And so I was like, I mean, the show's on the road. Because his little brother just got married to a girl that's his age. Because he's almost 10 years younger than me, y'all. I just went to the cradle and robbed him. I just cut the umbilical cord and took him. And so if he had married someone his age, they probably could have had like a couple of years hanging out, being friends, having a good time. But I was like, I want 8 kids, so let's go. And so like every time we add a kid, and I think after Honora, I was like, he was like, so you sure you want more? And I was like, yes, I'm very sure. But right now we don't make those decisions because she's not too. He's like, this has been a lot. But the thing that we focus on the hardest days is, what do we want our Thanksgiving table to look like in 20 years? What do we want the kitchen island to be like on the weekends, on holidays home, and they come home from school, or they're coming home to hang out? Like, what do we want that to look like? And if it's a boy and a girl and that like is what makes you happy, great. If it's 1 and that's what makes you happy, that's great. If it's 10, that's what makes you happy, it's great. Like in our relationship, we've just decided like we're gonna have as many kids as God gives us, right? Like, because there is a timeline. I'll also tell you I'm 40, and I don't think that I'm running out of eggs. My eggs aren't old. I could like talk about AMH and all that crap forever. It's a soapbox I could live on. Anti-Mullerian hormone, and they did the study on male rats that they used for the statistics in the fertility clinics to tell people that they're running out of eggs, so that you only have a finite amount of eggs. What's really interesting is that no other mammals have a finite amount of eggs, just humans. Really? Well, it doesn't, from a $12 billion a year industry doesn't help that statistic. It makes me real mad. Yes. Yes. Women had children well into their 50s. Not just 50 years ago, 75 years ago, but we're not as healthy. And men at 30 years old right now have the same sperm and testosterone levels of 70-year-old men in the 1950s. If you Google what is the sperm count in 2045, it says 0. because of how fast it's going down. And it's endocrine disruptors, and it's using testosterone, and it's bioidentical hormones for men and women, and it's birth control in the water and everything, like all that stuff. Like, it's a lot. Again, it could be it's a whole different topic. I could soapbox on that forever.
I feel like this the topic.
But taking care, I think one of the things that happens with our husbands is that we leave them to raise children. We like quit them, and like we're supposed to be in this relationship with them. And so what happens when we become a mother and they become a father, they lose us, and then they don't feel like they get us back. And so I think one of the things too culturally that is not supported, because we're all living on these little islands where we are completely holding on to the children and running everything, and we don't have people helping us, like, come take the baby so I can hang out with my husband and have that quality time, because there's just a constant distraction, is that husbands tend to be more resistant to growing the family if it's not a part of their vision for 20 years from now, and two, they don't feel like they're ever going to get their wife back, because there's a lot of resentment that can happen towards the child from the dad. And I wouldn't say it's everybody, but I think that there's a little bit of it in everyone. What would you say to that, honey? Would you comment on?
I think, yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I'm just committed to the long-term vision. And I think that's the bigger thing. I was just reading some studies earlier, and all the studies pretty much said that the more kids you have, the less happier that the couple gets. And it kind of, 3 children, or 3 years after, it was like there was a peak, and then it dipped down and then plateaued. It wasn't like it dipped horribly. I think after 4 kids, it kind of plateaued. From what it seems like, though, it's due to resources. There's a lack of resources, either financially or just human resources, or just like it's such a drain. But I also, as I was reading, I was like, I know for us, like, I know how to answer this question, but I don't think if your goal is happiness, I don't think children is a way to get you there. Like, I think there's...
Say it again, for the people in the back.
So I think in my mind, there just has to be a reason why you want to have more kids. But again, I don't know if anybody would say, I want to be happier, so I'm going to have more kids. But I think that's my perspective on it.
Wow. What a line, babe. What a line. It's also, that's what I tell people when they get married. Yeah, that was really good. Like, that was like, we could just drop the mic there for a minute. The other thing I tell people when they get married, as I said, marriage is not to make you happy, it's to make you holy. Like, it's literally the most self-sacrificing, frustrating thing you can't quit. You can't walk away. Like, person, like, you just lined yourself up with another sinner forever. It's going to irritate you. Like, are basically signing up to be irritated by them forever. And you're also in love, and you're going to do a lot of fun things together, and that's great. But having a family is a very selfless act, and it's a lot of work and sacrifice. But if we all look back at our childhoods, right, there's all things that we would do differently or anything like that. But personally for me, my parents were married 3 times each. I have 1 real brother, but I have a whole bunch of half and stepsisters and brothers. But the 4 of us that my mom had are really close. And I will tell you, on the other side of losing both of my parents, I would not want to face that alone. Without the 4 of my siblings that my mom had, it was awful because she died suddenly. She had a stroke. Just to be able to navigate that, but also my 2 sisters are 15 years older than us, and so they remember my childhood, because at this point right now, there's no one I can ask, what was I like as a kid? Because, like, I don't know if Honora's like me I feel like Karen must be just like me, because we are, like this all the time. But there's no one to remember our family and our times other than my siblings. And I also think that's a very important part. And if you think about the books that you love to read or the stories that you've always been impressed by, there's always some sort of brotherhood or sisterhood that happened in those stories that you're like, gosh, that's just beautiful. And even if you don't have an actual sister or brother, you create sisters and brothers, right, in that. And so I think that there's also something very beautiful, and I feel that way especially about my siblings, is like the bond that I had to them is very important to me, and I want my kids to have that. And that's what we teach our kids all the time. Like, you guys are each other's built-in best friends, and when we're gone, you'll have each other. And like Vincent knows that. Like, it's beat into him. He's like, when we have another baby, I hope it's a boy because I don't want to protect 3 girls. That's literally what he says. He's like, this is getting to be too much, because we also just had a cousin that's a girl, and he's like, I need help. He's like, I need help with all these women, because because we in our family, we're training him to protect women, like all women, like that's his job. And so he's like, this is a lot. He's like, we had a get together, and he's like, there's 9 girls here and 3 boys. If something happened, we'd have a lot of work to do. But that's just how we choose to do it. But I think that finding out what the vision is with your partner for your family, and if that has changed after you had a first kid. But there's going to be very difficult days as you grow your family. There's going to be days where you feel like you're going to quit. And that's when I would say, come here and hang out. Or also just get together with someone and be like, hey, like the other day, my friend had to go to the dentist because she chipped her tooth, and she was like, I just don't know what to do. And I was like, just bring your kids to me. So she dropped her kids off. I fed them breakfast. It was an 8 o'clock dentist appointment. I fed them. They hung out. My kids were at his mom's house, so I didn't even have kids for him to play with. I was like, here's a whole bunch of new toys that you don't usually have. And she was back in half an hour. And then we hung out for a minute, and she helped me fold my laundry, and then they left. And like that's the kind of friendships and village that you want to build for the times it's going to be very difficult, because there will be days that you want to pull your hair out.
Also, I'll end my part with this. Looking at family trees and like how many people it took to make you, and how many people it will take to make, like Bridget has been, Instagram's been showing her, it's always a reel that starts with like 2 grandparents. It's like from the 2 grandparents, how many kids do they have, and then how many of those kids have kids, how many grandkids they have, and then depending on how old they are,
54 and counting, or 70 and counting, and I'm like, I like literally, it's all I want.
So I feel like it's just hard. It's hard to know the impact, and to see. It's kind of like the saying. It's like any person can count how many seeds are in an apple, but only one person knows how many apples are in a seed. Which is like, what could that one person birth out of them existing? And I think it's a huge vision beyond. And again, having more kids does not make our life easier, I don't think, by any stretch of the imagination. But
everyone asks us all the time. They're like, "How are you going to do it?" We're like, "We don't know. We're just going to."
But it's also it's interesting, because that statement would have been the exact opposite 200 years ago. Like, if we had a farm and a whole bunch of animals and stuff, like you would just have as many kids as you can because they're all helpers on the farm. But now, in how society is, it's essentially flipped that equation on its head. But I just think, again, what is the value of, let alone a child of yours, but a human, and what could that one person bring to the world? And I think, who are we to rob the world of that possibility?
Well, I even think his grandfather is 84, 85?
85.
85? And he sits around, and his wife is in heaven. She passed away before our wedding. But like, his brother just had their first baby, and his other brother just got married this year. And it's just like, I was like, what does it feel like to be on the other side, like watching your grandkids have kids? Like, isn't it surreal? And Vincent's family's not big talkers. They're not chatty. But it's just like, your love made this. Like, and I think that's the coolest. My dad is from a family of 6, and my mom is from a family of 5. So on one side I have 19 cousins, on the other side I have 29 cousins. And they all have kids now. So like, if we got together, it's just a party.